Hello everyone and welcome to El Nuclear. I'm going to talk today about a speaker that I didn't think I was ever going to discuss on this channel. But by surfing the internet and doing my research and just exercising my passion for audio and music, because this is something I love. It's a hobby. I'm passionate about it and I love to learn about new products. I came across this particular speaker and I was like, oh man, I'm in trouble. I'm going to have to listen to this speaker. I was just like, oh, I'm kind of troubled by it because I felt kind of settled that I had what I needed, and the sickness, I was like, oh man, I know I'm going to have to deal with this now. And that's just my neuroses, whatever you want to call it. But it's that audio bug, that thing that we have. The people that are watching this right now probably to some degree can relate. So anyway, I was watching channels and I saw this speaker and I decided to audition a pair. So I took that opportunity and I ordered a pair, the white SourcePoint 8. The SourcePoint series, you could say, is comprised of the 8 and the 10. The 8 is, I would say, considerably smaller. Still a very large bookshelf speaker, if you want to call it a bookshelf. It's still very, very large. But compared to the 10, it's a nice compromise. If you have a smaller room, it can accommodate you. This particular setup is a bedroom system, so I wanted a smaller speaker. So I'm trying the SourcePoint 8. I've lived with them for a while now. I've listened to a variety of music. They still need some break-in hours, but even before proper break-in, I will tell you that the sound was immediately appealing in a big way. So I want to start by talking about size and value per dollar, because these are expensive speakers. Of course, you can spend a whole lot more. But $3,000 for a pair of bookshelves, to me, is a lot of money. I don't have the money to spend on wildly expensive audio gear. There has to be some degree of boundary, and I'm sure most of you can relate to this. The SourcePoint 10 is $1,000 more. Both of these speakers comprise very similar electronics. Measurements, care, scale, parts, almost identical. Sensitivity level is a little bit more in the 10s. But if you're going to save $1,000 and you're going to use a subwoofer, which is recommended with either of these models, I think the better value is the 8. It's a wonderful speaker. I'll just say that right off the bat. Starting with the tweeter. I just want to take this off just to kind of give you an idea. The tweeter is a very generous size, proportionate to the rest of the speaker. The cone, the construction of I think you'd call it a baffle, the fact you have the logo on the inside, also on the cover, so you can kind of go either way depending on your aesthetics. A very unique speaker, a romantic looking speaker, very vintage, yet with very modern components. It makes for a very amazing piece of art. That was the first thing that appealed to me. I'm very aesthetically oriented when it comes to putting together a system. I want things to look good together. It's important to me. I want it to sound good, but I want it to look good. It's part of your room. It's like you don't want something that's going to be, an eyesore. So white with the rest of the room, the size, still borderline large for a bedroom, unless you have a very large bedroom. I try to pull these away from the wall as much as I could. Right now they're a little bit back. They're a little less than a foot from the wall. I had them out a lot further. I tried both ways. I'm finding that you can still get away with these speakers being, you definitely want to pull them as far from the wall as possible. But if you're about a foot from the wall, the sound is going to be fine. The farther out you get, obviously, your mid-range especially is going to be cleaner. It's going to be a little bit more just pleasing to the ear, a little bit more in balance with everything else, with the frequency range of the entire speaker. But the tweeter is a real star in that even with very bright recordings, and if you know your record collection, you know those albums that have a brighter sound, that it might be problematic in some speakers. I listen to CD and vinyl, as you can see here. Diana Krall, Turn Up the Quiet, which was the last record that she made with Tommy LaPuma and Al Schmidt. And as a team, they made just incredible sonics to the records they made together. This one in particular, I think, was their best. In terms of sonics, it's an amazing recording, and it's a great test for the quality of speakers. This record has a very bright vocal. In some speakers, you would almost call it harsh, but not in the SourcePoint 8. The definition is there, the detail is there, but the harshness is not. It's almost like the top edge of the highs have been rounded, and it's a soothing high-end delivery. There's no harshness. It's not accentuated in any kind of obnoxious way. It's just right. It's just there, and it presents in a very pleasing, non-fatiguing way. That's the way I would describe the tweeter of the speaker. The mid-range is excellent, without rehashing too much technicality, because you can get a lot of that on the web. It's very romantic. It draws you in. It is just the right amount of warmth. It seriously feels so alive. And that's what you want from your music. Even with digital sources, there is an alive, organic nature to the sound that you sometimes lose with digital recordings. I'm hearing almost an analog feel coming through these speakers with a digital source. That says a lot. It really does. It's a large cabinet relative to most bookshelves, and it is kind of ridiculous to call it a bookshelf because it's so big, but it really it's a size that definitely is going to help with the general warmth. And the SourcePoint 10 is going to be a little bit deeper in the bass, of course, but both pretty much need some subwoofer. Doesn't have to be an extremely expensive subwoofer, extremely large. I'm using a very small one right now, maybe a little too small, but it's working. And with the right tweaking and adjusting, I'm fine-tuning it so that it definitely enhances these speakers, even in a modest form, as I have here. So the fact that you need a subwoofer with both, maybe recommend. You can get away without a subwoofer, especially if you're going a little bit closer to the wall, because they are very warm, but a subwoofer helps. And if you're going to use one, I think the SourcePoint 8 is a better value. You save $1,000 and you pretty much get the same technology. Going back one more time to what grabbed me initially was the aesthetics. When I saw the speaker, it immediately appealed to my vintage love. The fact that it kind of resembled something from the past, and yet completely modern components. It has a paper cone, which at first I was like, it's a $3,000 speaker, and I say $3,000 with stands, $2,750 without the stands. So give or take, it's still a $1,000 difference between the 8 and the 10. But what appealed to me was the fact that they had this really romantic look to them. And the paper cone, I did my research. I was like, you're paying a lot of money for paper, but paper is by design. The paper component to this cone was done on purpose. The size, natural sound is a product of using paper. I've done some research on this. It isn't a cheap way to go. It is the way to go due to the fact that it presents certain sonic qualities that other materials don't. So the paper cone is by design. The aesthetic, and it's also part of, it kind of reminds you of those old stereo speakers, the car stereo speakers that were paper with the center being, the tweeter, all coming from one point. And that is also part of the vintage aspect of the speaker, and maybe why they called it the SourcePoint. Possibly Andrew Jones, who designed the speaker, the fact that everything is coming from that one point in the speaker. It's not the tweeter separation, mid-range and bass. Everything is from a central point coming at you. And maybe that had something to do with naming it the SourcePoint series. Maybe. Who knows? I don't know the answer, but good guess. One last thing. When it comes to positioning the speakers, there's been a lot of debate on this. I do feel that they sound best straight on. I don't think towing the speakers in is a good idea. I found that they sound best and more natural, and the soundstage is better when you have them pointed straight at, in a line and not towed in. That's my particular opinion. The soundstage is tremendous, the way these have been designed. Obviously, that has been something that is a lot of thought has gone into that. They're a very unique shape. The way sound is deflected. Whatever is going on here in the science, it really works to create a magical sound picture. And overall, the warmth, the really good tweeter, and that soundstage sums up a great presentation that I've yet to beat in any other speaker I've listened to. I do think that the 60 XTI Martin Logan, I get a certain satisfaction from that speaker, which is similar. That is a full range speaker, of course, but it really does deliver all of those elements without any real effort, no perceived effort. It really is a beautiful sounding speaker. These are giving me a very similar satisfaction, a very romantic sound that draws you in and does not get old. It doesn't start to fatigue your ears. Lastly, power. This speaker, although it is rated to be usable with a variety of amplifiers and low to high power, I think you are going to get better sound if you use an amplifier that has at least a moderate level of power, 80 minimum watts per channel. I'm using a very old Carver amplifier that has about 125 watts per channel, and I'm getting great results. So I know there's a lot of flexibility, but I think the quality of your power is still going to be a factor in the sound you get from this speaker. So that is all I want to say today. SourcePoint 8 and 10. I've auditioned the 8, so I wanted to focus on the 8. The 10, if you have a larger room and a larger budget, might be the speaker for you. But value per dollar, wonderful speaker. SourcePoint 8. In this case, I got the white. And that is what I wanted to comment on today. Thank you so much for listening. Bye-bye.